Yeah, so I believe we can start now. So for those of you who didn't visit our webinars before, I am Ivan Kravtsov, Senior OSINT Analyst at Social Links. We are an international OSINT SaaS vendor with HQ in the Netherlands. And today we have all of you here for an hour-long webinar of open source intelligence with an emphasis on social media and messengers. And we're honored to have as our co-host today, Mr. Gary Ruddle, with extensive experience in the intelligence world in different roles. And we will start with Gary's part. So, Gary, thank you for being here, and word to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me again. It's a pleasure to be here. As Ivan said, my name is Gary Riddell. I'm ex-British military intelligence, and since then, I basically work in cyber threat intelligence. And intelligence is a big part of both of those things. Now, what that means here is that I've used a lot of tools over the years, things like i2 Analyst Notebook, which is, I believe it's an IBM product these days, all the way through to the likes of Maltego, which is, if any of you have used Social Links, which I hope you have, you'll find that inside of Maltego. And these graph analysis tools, I appreciate that some people on this call might be experts and some people might be at the beginning phase. So I'll try and just set the scene because I know Ivan's going to show some awesome stuff in a minute when he shares his screen. OSINT is amazing, and it's never been a better time than the present to get into it and understand it, because there is a mountain of information to be gathered from open sources and then turned into rich intelligence that you can then use to make decisions around whatever it is you do. If you're in law enforcement and you're trying to, detain people and make arrests, OSINT is where a lot of the action is going to happen. You only have to look at things like some of the EncroChat work that law enforcement have done, tracking drug dealers across Twitter, Telegram, Snapchat, Instagram. They advertise their services often in public and move into little groups. And using tools like Maltego and Social Links, indeed, you can really make it super easy to track these people and have an effect. On the corporate side, which is where I spend most of my time these days, you can do more awesome stuff as well. And, it spans a wide range of things. OSINT it's a funny term because you don't gather intelligence, you gather information. So it's, open source information, and we turn it into intelligence. And the amount of information that is out there from a cybersecurity perspective is obviously incredible with the way the internet is. Tools like Maltego make it super easy, again, to plot that visually and then exploit those data points to pivot and find other data points. Again, we'll see Ivan do some really, really cool stuff in a few moments. I'll give an example from the corporate world. I won't go into specifics or talk about, who the clients were, but we were tasked with finding a target and gathering as much information about them as possible. It didn't look like they had much of a social media presence whatsoever. In fact, we couldn't find a LinkedIn, a Facebook, an Instagram, a Twitter, none of it. On the surface, we couldn't find it. But using the tools of the trade, we were able to find family members' accounts which weren't as well protected as the target's account. And then from those points, extrapolate out using transforms in Maltego to then find the real target. And when you start to look across things like Telegram groups, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, it paints a very, very rich picture about a person very, very quickly. To try and do this stuff manually, which I've done in the past, manually trying to search to find people online, it can be infuriating. But whenever you have the right tools in play, it just makes it so easy. It is literally a few clicks and you get to see a load of data. You do need to spend a little bit of time massaging that to delete the extra bits and just focus in on what really, really matters. But it is incredible. And when you end up with this rich graph, you may have seen, in Sherlock Holmes TV shows, you get the wall with the pictures and the string and sticky notes. That's nonsense, right? No one can work like that. And it's super offline. There's only very few instances where you should ever have to resort to that type of craziness. You should be buried in a tool like Maltego with whatever tools that it is that you need. Could be social links, could be other tools, trying to solve the problem, because in this day and age, that is how you're going to figure it out. And we only have to look at what's going on in the world today online. I'm sort of switching off a little bit at the minute because I'm just getting overloaded with information, disinformation. All the information is out there online today, and it's also being poisoned with disinformation. And it's only through seeing the whole picture and being able to look into things like metadata, who's posting these things, what profile pictures do they have, are those profile pictures in use in other places on the internet. And being able to zoom out like that and move fast online will let you get to the bottom of pretty much whatever it is you're looking at. I'm very excited to look at some of the new research from the OCCRP that was just announced around some passport fraud that was going on in, I think it was the Dominican Republic. And that's going to be another incredible read because lots of extensive research going in there. So I hope that paints a bit of a picture around, the types of things that you can do from a law enforcement perspective all the way through to the corporate world. In cybersecurity, OSINT has a very special place when it comes to trying to figure out threat actors and track threat actors. It's quite nebulous. It's quite hard to talk about some of this stuff because there's so many different components to it. When you talk about cybersecurity and tracking threat actors, it can be incredibly difficult. But with tools like this, you can make it a lot easier. One of the things that we do when we track threat actors and try and attribute them is we bind them to TTPs. So let's say Gary is known for sending a very specific type of malware and then carrying out a number of different actions. You would bind those things together like a little fingerprint and try and track that across different victim organizations. And with tools like this, it just makes it so much easier to do. Otherwise, you end up with the board with the photographs and the pieces of string, losing your mind. So that's a little bit about me, a little bit about some of my experiences, some of the things that I've done in the past. If anybody has any questions, do feel free to pop them into the webinar chat and I'll do my best to answer them. Maybe I'll even type some of them out as we go. But Ivan, over to you.
Yes, Gary, thank you very much for that intro. That was quite useful, I think, for many of our current attendees. So now we're going to go through some data files within Maltego with the use of our specific software. And we're going to go through examples with different types of data points. And me and Gary are going to be commenting this in a semi-discussional manner. So the first and the simplest thing, which is a standard type of intro on our webinars, is one of the most frequently asked things. Well, one of them. We have a piece of personally identifiable data, such as a phone or an email address or a username. What can we do with it? What can we get based on that? Right now, we are running a script of second-degree automation to gather various data points related to the verified personal phone number of Mr. Samuel Bankman-Fried, a famous executive from the FTX exchange. And what we see so far are some personal accounts within Skype, within Telegram, within Facebook. We can see that there is an account registered within Facebook to this phone number, so probably this one here is still actual. And we see the company name of Alameda Research. So if we used facial recognition here, or if we just ran a search from the name Sam Bankman-Fried, in the existing context around this gentleman, this would obviously gives us tons and tons of false positives. So this here is more specific and more precise. And as one of our today's topics is messengers, we will go through the capabilities that we have with Telegram. So Telegram has initially been marketed by the excellent Mr. Durov as a very secure, very private type of messaging app. And there are different opinions on that matter, but a subjective observation, I think it could be said that part of the reasons why it is not as secure and as private as one may think is not in the architecture, not in the security specifics of the app itself, but in the fact that it has de facto turned into a social media. It has de facto turned into a messenger-based social media platform with groups, communities, people posting, people commenting, accounts having metadata. There is the Telegram ID that we see here from Mr. Fried. There are various services that have been developed focused on Telegram specifically for intelligence, for quick phone lookups to match a Telegram ID with a phone number. There is the username. There is this profile picture and so on. And while there is, of course, room for privacy and room for anonymity to some extent, provided that the person is engaging in good OPSEC practices other than their daily messaging app, it can be, and it quite often is, a rich source of information to further turn into intel. One of the instances of that is, for instance, here we see the groups where Mr. Bankman-Fried, his account, is participating. We can see a definite pattern of groups related to cryptocurrency and crypto trading, and FTX specifically. And we also see, and this is something new, it wasn't there some time ago, groups with screen names in the Hebrew language. The other type of thing that we could see here with an automated industrial tool are the messages that Mr. Bankman-Fried has historically left in various groups. And what were those texts specifically? What did Mr. Bankman-Fried say there? Is it something of interest to an investigator? And investigators of different profiles from different organizations. I'm sure not a very long time ago, there were many people from very different subcategories of this walk of life that were interested in Mr. Bankman-Fried and what he does and what he's engaged in. So, Gary, I think it would be great if, based on your experience, you would also comment how this type of data could be valuable.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say. You know, if you're in law enforcement or you're in the prosecution or the defense and you need to very quickly get together a whole bunch of data that shows exactly what Sam has been saying publicly in, you know, groups on Telegram, there's no faster way than what you're seeing right here. Fully exportable, totally visual, fantastic resource. The alternative is that you manually try and go through Telegram and do this, but that's almost impossible, right? This lets you do it at any scale. Ivan's just using Sam as an example. You could have 10, 15, 20 different people running these types of searches and seeing all the links being drawn together to see who spoke where. And it lets you join the dots between groups and see different groups, which is really, really interesting, especially if you have to launch investigations and connect those dots. In the military world, just as an anecdote, one of the things that we do is we look at the shortest path to get to a target using the information that we have. And obviously, if you have to speak to Bob and Bob speaks to Alice and Alice speaks to the target, then that's the shortest way. Then that's what you try and do. And this is the same type of thing you're seeing here. It's It's amazing. It always blows my mind seeing this stuff, even though I've been doing it for a long time.
Yes, and the capabilities for doing this type of work, they grow not just by the year, but by the month right now, with various sources springing up, with people finding way to scrape data and structure it in various ways from those sources and so on. So another, second part of our basic intro today would be several email addresses. All of those email addresses may have something in common. So the basic thing that we're going to do now is we're going to check what is connected to them and where we can see the specific entity and where we can see just the fact of a certain account being registered with that email, which is also potentially quite useful. So, for example, if we are researching an individual, and if as the input we have an email identifier, if there are no active accounts, but we see 10 different platforms where there is factually an account that has been registered with this email address, then in some instances, those can tell us something about the person. Those can tell us about their daily interests. Those can sometimes tell us about their occupation. For example, if a person has an account registered in GitHub and GitLab, or if person is engaged in Pinterest, Etsy, that type of stuff, if a person is generally active on social media, and so on. And of course, whenever we get an actual account, which we can access even out of this specific automated software, then that I wouldn't say golden in 100% of cases, but that quite usually can be an important thing. And another thing that we're going to do is see if a basic Google query gives us anything, because the common thing about those email addresses is actually that they all came from a docs of a cyber vigilante group that have been calling themselves Ghostface Security. They have been actual a few years ago, or a bit more than a few years ago, when ISIS was all the rage, and they were famous for launching DDoS attacks on them, on doxing and de-anonymizing members of those organizations. And those addresses are something that just came up in a pastebin document. So yes, while those transforms are loading, I see that there are some questions within the chat. Useful for investigative journalists, but not available in the free version of Maltego. Yes, most of the things that I'm doing now, except for the visualization and the graph capabilities and the mapping, those are paid subscriptions that are accessible through Maltego, or like Gary said, i2Analyst Notebook has similar connectors, including Social Links Pro, among other things. So now we're starting to get a bit more. We're getting Google IDs from Gmails. We're getting accounts within Skype. We're getting accounts within LinkedIn. And we can further extract the metadata, well, in that sense of the word, from those accounts to see where it makes the most sense to pivot further.
Yeah, this is what's amazing. I've done investigations in the past where it seemed like a dead end, but we found, one string, one email address or one phone number or one unique string that just allowed us to pivot to a whole other world that we just left behind where we were, and we went that way because it was just incredible. That was where the gold was. And it kind of reminds me of, offensive security, like hacking, penetration testing. You have to enumerate, you have to figure out the size of the attack surface and spend so much time trying to build up as much knowledge as possible and dig into every little thread. And that might be what it takes, that sort of determination sometimes, to find the gold mine.
Gary, would you agree with the saying, with the thesis that in the context, in the modern context in 2023, when we're talking about offensive security and hacking in the most widely spread understanding of that word, well, specifically in penetration testing, that open source, that OSINT methods, different OSINT methods, not just infrastructure, not just network scanning using utilities like Nmap and all that other stuff, that OSINT is an essential thing in preliminary reconnaissance assessment of the target?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, absolutely. You know, even if you want to send a phishing email, for example, you should be going and trying to figure out who you're going to send it to, what they might click on. If you want to get a phishing email to me, send me some cute puppy videos, right? that's that's the link I'll click on. And you can only learn that about me by going to my YouTube and seeing, oh, Gary loves dogs. He's got a dog, so he might like dog videos, and that's just open source intelligence. Yeah, it's absolutely crucial because the more you gather, the more you learn about your targets, the more pointed you can be. You don't need to be spray and pray, as we say in the military. You can be a sniper and pick off your victims at will, as you were. So yes, I would absolutely agree with that.
a similar thing that came to mind is that there are people who are far from this type of professional world within jobs in enterprise sales, like really large deals, large responsibility, that do this type of thing, that are not aware of the practices in the intelligence and security types of world. But it's quite similar to send a perfect pitch. They do study the organization and the key people in the organization, and specifically to determine who it is better to pitch to and how to do it. So yeah, it's quite a
Yeah.
universal set of methods and methodologies. So in more complex types of research, we would, of course, not be limited to just social media and not be limited to just phones, just emails, usernames. For instance, there is a partial representation of a large schema of smuggling fentanyl precursors into the United States from China, specifically Wuhan region. And basically, there were various chemical facilities, such as 9W Technology Co., Shuzhou Saoli Pharmatech Co., and some other companies, which are publicly available and trading in their goods, which are not necessarily illicit, but can serve as precursors on standard surface web international trade type of resources, which oftentimes include, for example, Chinese phones, where we can see messengers with European-looking names, accounts within Skype attached to those, and further. So those had accepted payment with crypto. We see several addresses here, which has marked in a negative way on the Bitcoin abuse database. Some of those providers also have corporate accounts within LinkedIn, which we can also see within the graph. And then those were shipped in food or other types of containers to intermediary brokers, which were based in some of the countries of Latin America, who then in turn shipped it to organized crime groups within Mexico that specialize in providing narcotics for the US market, which is one of the key markets, obviously. And those precursors already on the territory of LATAM and Mexico turned into some deadly synthetic stuff, including fentanyl, which is more dangerous than opiate drugs or entheogens, for example. And we have here one example of such a broker from Guatemala. We can see the name Ana Gabriela Rubio Zea, who was also publicly known eco-mindfulness, that type of social media influencer with active accounts within Instagram and TikTok. there is one post within Instagram from seemingly a close relative based on the last name, which we see within the graph, which has been left. The account itself is no longer active. And TikTok is still there, but obviously with no updates. This person was arrested some time ago. And what we see here is an account within Facebook. And an important technique that we are going to approach now will be building a social graph, and specifically a content-based social graph. So that is a Sockman-specific type of thing. What we're going to do is not extract the friends, the followers, the followees, other types of specified connections, but rather we're going to extract metadata about the account, and then the content of the user, and the content that the user was tagged in. And from those, and this is something that is much better done within industrial software, such as the one that you're looking at, because it's one of the more time-consuming type of procedures if one was to do it manually. We are, from those pieces of content, in turn, getting all of the comments, all of the reactions, all of the replies, the reacting accounts, the offers of replies and comments. And since those entities, if one entity is produced from several queries on several other parent ones, they are merged automatically. And so based on this, we can see, especially if the person was active to some extent within that specific platform, which other people were interacting more with them. So that is what we're doing now with the photos, posts, and videos of Ms. Rubio. And this same type of logic can be extrapolated onto not just all of the other social media, but to all of the other platforms, which may not be conventional social media in a wide understanding, but that have the logic of social media as their basic logic. So what we just said about Telegram, the same type of thing can be said about Discord or GitHub or many other types of platforms.
Ivan, could you just show off the different views? I think it was Pamela was asking about different ways of visualizing the data. So the layout options, I think.
Yes, certainly. So those types of visualizations, they can be called ways to look at the same set of data from various perspectives. I2 Analyst Notebook is especially rich in those, although Maltego does have some good ones of their own, the basic standard ones. We're just waiting for all of the results to load because this functionality, it becomes very useful when we're working with a large volume of data, and when we're working with a network in a wide sense of that word. So we have extracted the interacting profiles. The next possible step is to see whether there is anything, at least on the surface level, that is common between them. And now we can change the layout a bit. And if we sort those entities by diversity of descent, this is what Gary was talking about just now. We're going to see which accounts within the logic of the sequence of the queries that we did are the most relevant within this network, not meaning the Facebook social media network, meaning a personal network of Ms. Gabriela Rubio, within the scope of her Facebook, based on the interactions that they have had within it. And also what other things, what other types of metadata, such as them being from Guatemala City in Guatemala, what else is there in common between them? now we can go to the next example, but I must say that this technique is very, very helpful when doing actual investigations. It is very helpful when delving into organized crime group analysis, and in corporate types of investigations and business intelligence as well. Now, the next level for us in terms of the volume of data that we would be working with, and but which may be situationally quite relevant, and which is a separate type of task entity, is assessing social listening within the context of social media. So assessing what is being shared, what is being said, what type of narrative is being pushed around a specific topic, which may include an individual, an organization, a socio-political event, location, or anything else. A simple example that we see here in the case with Twitter, which is becoming more known as X, is the hashtag of Balochistan, which is a territory divided between Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, mostly the second country, from what I understand. And the ethnicity which identifies themselves with that territory do not have their own state. And of course, there are many people that are not very happy with that. And there are discussions around that hashtag and some other ones within many social media platforms. Such is the case with all territorial disputes in general, which we can see partially here, and we can see the most active accounts. Also, if we further add to that natural language processing using ChatGPT or some other type of large language models, a second example that we see here already within Instagram, but this time related not to Balochistan, but to the Leonkur rocks, which are known as Tokto in South Korea and Takeshima in Japan. It's disputed territory between them. And here we see the Instagram posts from those specific keywords and different combinations of keywords. And we can see, among other things, the stated locations of the profiles which are engaged in the posting and the most active posters within this specific data set. So within the instance of South Korea, within the specific type of data set that we currently have, that we have made with a certain sequence of transforms, it seems they are slightly less active in discussing it within Instagram than users from Japan. But other things that we can see is that it's relatively actively being discussed by profiles with locations being stated within North America or within Southeast Asian countries, as well as India, the last two being the least active, of course. And that discourse and the comparative weight of activity will be different depending on the perspective, of course, and depending on what type of input we use initially. So if we use the Korean name for them, the topics will be the same, but the sentiment will be quite different. And the groups of accounts, the clusters, will also be different. If we use Takeshima, which is a Japanese word, then obviously there will be the same type of difference within that data set, and how we can interpret it and what conclusions we can draw from it. Gary,
this would be good. Yeah,
yeah,
this would be good, wouldn't it, for finding disinformation networks. So, I've never really done much in the disinformation space, but I can imagine that they all support each other's content. So if I spew some disinformation and you find my profile and you know that that's just lies, my other profiles that I use to like my post and comment on it to move it up the algorithm, you'd be able to pull that and find a whole network of bots, disinformation campaigns, I guess. Would that be right?
Yes, exactly. And it can be, there is the most widely spread type of use case, but this technique can be used for various purposes. For instance, in the specifically in the cybersecurity world, there was a campaign by the Lazarus Group where they were doing that among a network of, I think, 60 or 70, something like that, Twitter accounts. They were doing that over a course of 6 months to a year. Just don't remember the precise numbers, to increase the credibility of those accounts. And then they started sending DMs and friend requests, and DMs, not just in Twitter, to renowned security researchers to convince them to do a joint project, and and eventually infect them with malware. So they were the primary targets for this campaign. That's actually quite sophisticated, because it took so much time and probably patience and planning from their side.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so there is currently a poll. Did you enjoy the webinar? Are you planning to implement OSINT solutions at your organization? Would you like to have a demo of Vessel Pro? And was the webinar useful to you? We highly encourage you to answer those questions. And I think that we have already gone through the most interesting examples. And Gary, we can now answer to some of the questions that we have in the QA. But before that, we'd love to hear your opinion on the questions that we've voiced slightly before. So the first one would be, what is the short-term future that you can imagine likely for open source intelligence, well, in the scope of 1 to 3 to 5 years from now?
I hope that it is largely improved by AI, large language model type stuff. In the in the marketing space, ChatGPT is obviously commonplace now for creating images. And you got Midjourney, you got ChatGPT for blog posts. I think they just released DALL-E 3 as well. So OpenAI is really dominating. I would love to see more of the cyber vendors and indeed the intelligence vendors incorporate AI much faster. I should be able to open up a little Google search box that says, here's a massive graph, tell me the story. And it just tells me what's been going on. I even spoke to Gary in this chat room and he said, let's attack Lazarus Group, just to speed up the analyst journey rather than having to click through the graphs. As fun as it is to click through the graph, you can miss things because it's still manual, because you have to read it and click through. I think it'd be really cool if we could see more AI in this space because it just makes things 10 times faster.
Great. Thank you for that answer, Gary. And the same question about cyber threat intelligence, but I assume you kind of partially answered that.
Yeah, I guess the same. The AI is what's going to define. I'm not a big AI buzzword kind of guy, by the way, so I don't throw it around lightly. I genuinely mean, it's just going to be a game changer for everyone involved in these lines of work, or I hope that it is. And I think the vendors that incorporate it into their stack as fast as possible and do it well will win by miles. CTI can be incredibly complex. And things like attribution, I spoke about it earlier, trying to attribute attacks to threat actors can be really hard. Proof in cyberspace is tough, just because you see a Word document on your desktop that says Lazarus Group on it, or it has some indicators that it was written by a Korean keyboard, and doesn't mean that it is them. False flag operations have existed for hundreds of years where it's actually someone else doing the attacks. So I think anything we can do to make all of that easier and better would greatly help. Hopefully AI is the thing that does it for us because it's so good.
Yes, what you said about false flag operations and the like, and how complicated it is in the CTI. A person from Kaspersky Labs once, from their international team, the abbreviature is a great team. So they have people in Germany and Singapore and other places, said that working as a malware analyst, as a CTI researcher, is very much like working as a paleontologist. So surely something that AI would make easier in that respect. Yeah,
Yes,
good.
hopefully.
And and again, about the future, in your opinion, given your military intelligence background, how do you think the convergence of all those new tech things such as AI, LLMs, and computer vision, etc., the OSINT methodologies, and UAVs, drones, the convergence of all of that is going to shape the future of how military intelligence specifically is conducted within the near future, do you think?
Yeah, like, so I served in the Middle East in 2011. Uh, that's my most recent. So I did it a few times, but that was my most recent one. I've been using drones since the late 2000s. And the drones that we had back then were called Scan Eagle, these big old school drones. The footage is terrible. It looks like an old, Nokia mobile phone from when we were all kids. But nowadays the footage is a lot more high quality. And when you look at the technology that say DJI has on their drones, it's incredible. Some of the stuff that
Yes.
it can do,
Keeping in mind,
tracking and
keeping in mind that it's a consumer technology, it was not initially manufactured as a military thing.
yeah. And when you use the consumer stuff is the best stuff, right? I always talk about this. The gear that I have here is better than the gear that I get at work, right? Because it's enterprise versus at home, right? I'm running top spec MacBooks. We're not going to get that in the enterprise. And the same kind of goes in the military for the most part as well. Are they using the best assault rifles in the military? No, not really. The best ones are, the latest and greatest things that the manufacturers are making. The same goes for the drone technology as well. It's robust. I wouldn't say it's the most cutting edge, but it's very robust. But I think as those things get more incorporated and more commonplace across the military, it's going to be incredible in military intelligence, like the collection capability that they're going to have down the line. From a satellite perspective, it's incredible anyway, and I can't really say too much. But the drone stuff is going to be very exciting, especially in conflicts like what we're seeing, in the Middle East at the minute, and Ukraine. We're already seeing really good innovations in the drone space. But I do wonder if we're going to be in this sort of Terminator position where it's two guys in camouflage, one on the Russia side, one on the Ukraine side, flying their little drones against each other. That might be a good thing, I guess, from saving lives perspective,
The
drone v
humanitarian
drone, rather than
perspective.
yeah, could we all just meet in Call of Duty and then whoever wins that's the victor,
Yes,
that might
many people would like that probably.
yeah, but I think the collection is going to be incredible, in 10, 15, 20 years, what we should be able to do with LiDAR and all these incredible technologies, getting that into government hands will either be a really good thing or a really bad thing, depending on whose side you're on, I guess.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, great. Thank you for that answer. And the last one from our side would be there are listeners currently on our event that are just starting out or thinking about starting out an intelligence or security career. And what would be the most important things you think that you could recommend to them at that stage?
I think if you're starting in intelligence, well, first of all, there is a place for you in intelligence. a good journalist could work in intelligence because the discipline is largely the same, but you just need to be passionate about any of these things. If you like reading books like the Panama Papers and you get excited about the idea of playing with the data, if you don't know about the Panama Papers, just Google that. You'll quickly get there. There's databases you can go and dig into, and I spoke earlier about the OCCRP, fantastic project. I would start getting excited by some of this stuff, and then just figure out ways to get involved. I mean, a few weeks ago, I was in Amsterdam with my family, and I posted a different picture every day from the Netherlands, and asked people to try and geolocate me and figure out where it was. That's a very specific skill set, trying to figure out exactly where someone has stood, but incredibly useful when you're trying to identify disinformation. I think there were some videos recently of a helicopter being shot down somewhere, and people were trying to say it was today in Israel, or but actually it was 2021. Or so it's useful to be able to have those skills, to just even do that one specific thing. Intelligence is a massive discipline. There are so many different aspects to it, and OSINT is as big as the internet is. So learn how to use Google Docs, learn how to use tools like Maltego, or get the whiteboard out and draw your lines and get your pieces of string if you want to look good in front of your family. And yeah, just get in the mix and start picking up the tools. I put a video out the other day about how people need to learn how to use Git, how to use Git clone to pull tools off of GitHub. There's a lot of tools on GitHub. I'm sure Ivan has an arsenal of them in his opt folder on his Linux machine. I'd recommend that you figure out how to use that, because so many people out there make really useful tools that give you just specific capabilities that you can't get through a web browser. So learn how to use Linux operating systems, learn how to use the command line, figure out how to get tools off of GitHub, and just start digging around. That's honestly my top tip. Just start. And you can always message me if you're totally stuck. Drop me a message on LinkedIn or something, and I'll gladly give you some links to inspire you.
Brilliant. I think this was useful for many people here. And yes, we're getting a message that GeoGuessr is fun too, and it's an excellent example of gamified learning of a specific skill that can be quite useful in that type of career. So yeah, great. Now we have a ton of questions right now. We'd love to answer them all, of course, but we're in sort of a limited time frame. And for those of you whose query is specific around some kind of issue that you are facing that you think could be helpful to you, either Social Links or Gary, then by all means, write us an email or contact us on LinkedIn or somewhere else. And we will address your question. For now, we'll try to answer what we have time for. So how much information can you get if you're operating in a jurisdiction under GDPR, or is the information open on most social media? I guess that depends on what you would be using it for. I'm not exactly a lawyer, but in general, on many social media, yes, it would be publicly available, and publicly available is not limited to social media. There is a standing debate, for instance, among many people about whether data leaks and data scrapes can be considered publicly available information, because well, it's not something clandestine, it's something that a lot of people can see, but that's debatable, yes. So, for example, we want to search for friends that were unfriended in Facebook account and all other friends relation from Facebook account that is already disabled and moved by the account owner. Well, perhaps we could go out of the confines of Facebook, and if that person was not anonymizing themselves, like publicly, there is still the username, there is still the picture, there is still the screen name, and you can pivot in many different combinations, including Google dorking, which is an amazing thing, which Gary has just referenced as an important skill. So yeah. I'm interested to hear the most interesting case that Gary has ever worked on in OSINT, be it in the military or in cyber. Additionally, what do you do, Ivan? And was the Wuhan study your favorite example of OSINT's power? So yeah, I'll answer first and I'll leave Gary, your part to you. I work as an analyst. I sometimes do cases on the side. I sometimes help our clients, and those requests can be different. And the clients that we have and the requests that we face are also different. And was the Wuhan study my favorite? No, although I think it's an interesting thing, because as many of us could say, as Gary, I think definitely could say, and many people among our today's attendees, the most interesting stuff is not the type of stuff that you would openly talk about for an abundance of reasons. Well, the most interesting stuff is obviously NDA. So yeah, but thank you very much for your question. And Gary, to you, the most interesting case, in your opinion, that you have ever worked on in OSINT, be it in the military or in cyber?
Well, the military I can't talk about at all because I'll be in prison. But I'll tell you what the most interesting one was. I started my YouTube channel like December 2021, and started putting content on LinkedIn in April last year. And some of that's cyber content, some of it's intel content. But a private investigator reached out to me and asked me could I geolocate an image, which was a screenshot from a pretty low res Instagram video. So I made a video of that. It's on my YouTube channel. Big plug for the YouTube channel. I think the title is "Solving a Real OSINT Case," and yeah, there's nothing distinguishing in the picture. There's no like label on the bar that's partially cut off that you can Google. But I found out exactly where it was. I even have photographs of inside the bar. This is the table that they were at. This is the direction they were facing. So that was that was pretty cool because it was just weird. You make some content, people like it, and then someone really reaches out and says, "Hey, I'm a private investigator, but could you help me find this?" So that was quite cool. But I mean, in the military, Intel, oh, I've done loads of stuff, right? Like it's just, and some of it you don't know if it's you having the effect or if it's just luck. You know, that's the challenge with intelligence. I could write intelligence reports every week for the rest of my life and never really know if they kept us safe or put us at risk. It's tricky to really quantify the ROI sometimes, unless take Zero Dark 30, the movie, where they got Bin Laden. That's a mass. The intelligence behind that, the story behind that is incredible. That is one of the best examples of like the return on your investment in intelligence. It took years, but that was the end result.
Yeah, great. Very full answer. Thank you very much. So I also see how widely is Maltego used in risk intelligence, not cybersecurity in corporates. I'd say that a bit less than in cyber, but not a lot less than in cyber. There are many people who use Maltego with just specific connectors that are not threat intelligence platforms, but that are perhaps something like Orbis, BVD, Open Corporates, which is also a part of Social Links. And Social Links also has some corporate sources as well. The local registries, the data sets, which include Panama Papers, but also in general, the ICIJ offshore leaks. So I'd say that quite often, based on subjective observations.
Yeah, I would agree as well. Plus, Maltego is free. You can just download it and play with it. As we're with I2 Analyst Notebook, you got to fork up a lot of money just to play with it. So it's a bit like, you know, downloading the free version or the cracked version of Photoshop. We all learn it, and then we end up buying the real one because we know how to use it already. So yeah, I'm with you there, Ivan.
Yeah, good. So a couple more questions, which we currently have. Dropping my LinkedIn accounts as well for those of you that would be interested. There are people that want to communicate with us on this webinar, which is quite good, of course. Oh, yeah, great. Hello.
There's a question about working with secret services, and if you're an expert in OSINT, can you get into it? Just apply, right? Go to mi5.co.uk or mi6.co.uk or cia.gov. Stick in your application. It's as easy as that. You probably won't do much work as like a freelancer, really.
I'd say that that type of thing, it may be subjective opinion, but I think that is quite similar in the context of many kind of countries, many kinds of societal cultures. People who are interested in that, people who are passionate about that, there are instances where they themselves get approached by the sort of people that it was inquired about now, even if they didn't have it in mind before that. So yeah,
I think there's more in. I genuinely think there's more interest and work to be done sometimes outside of those worlds. You know,
yeah,
if you're in military, if you're like me and you're in military intelligence and you're looking at a very specific region of a very specific country, I don't have time to look at all these other interesting things going on. But if you're Andy Greenberg, the guy who wrote Sandworm, well,
oh yeah,
you know,
that's that, yeah.
he can just open Maltego, turn on his transforms, and dig into anything. Write an amazing story, publish a blog, make a YouTube video. I think that's way more fun, right? Than but if you're looking at a job and a career, sure, Secret
Yes.
Service stuff would be good.
Mr. Greenberg also had an excellent book, which I'm not sure will be visible here, Tracers in the Dark. Uh,
Yeah.
it's a very, very interesting read. It places a lot of emphasis on the development of cryptocurrency investigations and cryptocurrency analysis tools, even as not just for financial AML, CFT type of stuff, but the way that a team of investigators can look at a dark web case or at a conventional crime case through the perspective of blockchain analysis. And they go through the famous case of Alphabet. They go through Ross Ulbricht, obviously, as the first one of its kind. And they go through the
Welcome to video.
CSAM platform that was hosted about in South Korea, not the Anthem case, but the other one. And
Yeah.
it's done in a very good in a very interesting manner, and especially that it's written in a pleasant way from a literature perspective, but it's nonfiction. Like literally all of the people that you see who are the heroes of that book, you can look them up on LinkedIn. You can see their career track, how it
Yeah.
changed, and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're interested in cyber, I would get a hold of Andy Greenberg's Sandworm book. If you're interested in tracking like blockchain, Web3, cryptocurrency, child sexual exploitation, the other book that Ivan just held up would be the one to get. They're both so well written, like you could just give them to your parents, right? And your parents could read them. They're not technical.
Yes, if somebody here by any chance knows Mr. Greenberg, we would also love to have him on the webinar. Oh, yeah. Sandworm.
I'll drop my message for you.
Great. Thank you very much, Gary. Yes, I see that there is one more question. The other book is Tracers in the Dark. One more question. Apologies, but we're really currently out of our time frame. So you can write to our corporate email. We'll be sure to have a conversation with you and see how we can be mutually helpful. So thank you very much for today. I think this was a lot of fun, and it seems it was productive. Gary, thank you. I always love having interesting co-hosts here from different walks of life, from different backgrounds. I think that the things that you were saying were very insightful to many of our attendees today, and we hope to see you also again at our further events. Thank you very much, and
Thanks for
wishing
having me.
a good day and week ahead. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.